Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I would love to hear where you are in the world. Please put a chat or a comment in the chat. This is the first show of 2024, and I'm so excited to have my very dear friend. We've known each other since the beginning of Civility Partners, Mel Proshchenko, and I just wanted to share what she wrote in her bio. Let's see where to go. That Mel is the best human I've ever met, which is very true. I do love you, Mel, so much. So Mel works with teams, and her and her team work with teams. She's also a LinkedIn Learning course author. She's got over 20 years of experience helping teams work better together. And just before we jump into that, wanted to share a little bit about Civility Partners. We are focused on building positive, thriving work environments. And of course, having highly functioning and well-functioning teams is part of that. So I'm so glad to chat with you today, Mel. And Mel, don't forget to remind me for the activity ID at the end of the show. I'm going to put it on you.
Thanks. Because you know how good I am at remembering things.
I know. You're my friend, so I can rely on you to be there for me.
I love it. Pass our future failures on to other people. Yeah.
I pass the buck when possible. That's a very important tip for having a positive, thriving work environment.
To be successful, focus on the things you can be successful at.
Yes. So
I'm cute.
I'm curious, Mel, how did you get into focusing on teams as your kind of area of expertise? What's that journey like? I don't know that I know the answer.
I mean, it's an interesting question. I don't get asked that question very often. So I kind of grew up in leadership development and then kind of like ascended in my career as an internal leadership development practitioner.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say I don't know, 15 years ago or something, I kept having this thought, here we are, we're developing our leaders. And the leaders that were really successful actually were the leaders that had teams of people that were really good at being team members. And it wasn't a reflection that was lost on me. And so I started actually when I did leadership development, I started actually focusing more on team development than I did on, I would help leaders learn how to empower their teams and pass problems onto teams and to focus more on the team. And I think I was a more effective leader developer that way. And then I just kind of ascended. And then I started focusing on executives in my career. And then I spun off and started to do my own thing. And not only do I kind of philosophically believe that, it's not that I don't believe that leadership development is important. It's just, I think we don't focus enough on team capability. And I think we put a lot on our leaders and we have all these expectations of our leaders. Like it's the leader's job to motivate the team and to cultivate the team and to build the team. And I just think it's kind of unrealistic. And I also,
go ahead.
Sorry. And I also think it's just it's impossible, especially now with just teams just kind of being everywhere.
Yeah. I'm so glad you said that because I had never thought about that, but you're right. It's not, we really focus on the individual. And now that I'm just tying that to my own life, when we're talking about leaders who engage in bullying, lots of people tend to focus on that leader. It's like, but it's happening in the context of your organization. They're not just like that all day, every day, all the time. And so kind of similar, it's not just about the leader's leading people. And that's a context that is obviously very relevant to the situation. Tell me, what's one thing, when you're kind of going into work with leaders, what's one thing that you feel like, gosh, I wish leaders knew this? And a lot of leaders don't know that. What is that thing?
That's a good question. Well, I guess there are a couple things that are coming to mind. First and probably most important is team effectiveness is a journey. I think this is not anybody's fault or anything. It's just we kind of look at team building as oftentimes as like this event.
Right.
We want to think of it like an event.
Right.
And so a lot of times when I go in and work with teams, they're surprised at how much accountability folds out of the session, or a need for accountability. And like we make a commitment to do X, Y, or Z. And like then you actually got to like leave and go do that thing differently that you decided you were going to do differently. And that requires talking about it and recentering in on that goal and holding each other accountable and following up. And like, so it's work. So I guess that like the second kind of thing that was floating in my mind as when you asked that question was team effectiveness is just like any other business problem. And I wish leaders kind of realized that we attack team dysfunction just like we do any other business problem. And so sometimes people will call me and they'll be like, hey, so we were thinking about doing a happy hour. And I'm like, okay, do you solve budget problems with a happy hour? I mean, sometimes.
Depends on how much tequila is.
Right? I'm not saying that happy hour is the wrong choice. I mean, actually, I kind of would say happy hour is always the wrong choice, but that's another conversation for another time.
Yeah.
But I also think like I mean, what are you trying to do here?
Yeah.
I think leaders oftentimes think like they see team building as like a fun outdoor activity, and that's great. And I think that actually does accomplish stuff. Yeah. But first step, just like if you were having a budget problem, you're like, where's the variance? Where's the problem? What are we trying to achieve? What's the core of the issue? What is the goal? Yeah. And then you kind of back into what you do about it.
Tell us a little bit about some of your work. When you go in and work with clients, I know you do workshops and sometimes short workshops, sometimes full day or couple day workshops. What else are you doing to help them? Tell me more about how you help teams be effective.
Well, thanks for that question.
Now you can see why we're really good friends.
So I guess my work with teams, like kind of, it's different every time almost, but it either kind of folds into a team coaching relationship. So leaders will call and they'll be like, okay, I'm having this problem and I don't really know how to, I think I want to do a team building session. Can you help me? And I always back away from that being the solution and ask, okay, well, what's going on? And that kind of is almost like a little coaching session with that leader. And then we find that maybe there's two people that aren't getting along, and you don't do team building with the whole team when you've got like a tiny little conflict between two people. Like you're not going to solve that kind of problem with team building. So that turns into sometimes like a 3-step journey. Maybe we start with coaching with these people, and then we move to drafting what we want great to look like. And then we do team building and enroll the entire team on creating team norms. I'm making this up, Kat, but that's kind of, or sometimes an organization has a really clear view on what they want to cultivate with their teams. And they come to me and they say, hey, we're scattered all over the place. We want to collaborate more effectively. How can you help? And like, yes, let's do it. I can go in and do full day in-person sessions, or we do a series of online virtual sessions. I do a lot of assessing what the team members think works well and what doesn't work well, so that, because most of the time teammates, they know the answer. Like we don't need best practice. We don't need academic. We don't need to read a book. Most of the time we can cultivate our answers together. And so where I think like what my jam is going in and helping leaders just lead the conversation with their team on what can we do to just tweak things to take it from A to F and just do a really better job for each other.
Okay.
What do you like?
Go ahead.
So, part of the reason why when you invited me to do this, I was stoked was because when you and I hang out, I always learn so much from you, and I feel like you learn from me. And
Yeah.
we've been in this game for so long that oftentimes we don't get to I don't get to learn from other people, and you're one of those people that when I hang out with, I never run out of questions. And like all these questions that you're asking me, like what is one thing you wish leaders knew? That's the first question you asked. Like after I was done asking that question, I'm like dying to know what you would say to that question.
Oh, well, I would love to answer. Thanks for turning the tables, Mel. This is one of the reasons I love hanging out with you. You are.
I'm getting something out of this too, girl.
This isn't one way learning. Let's see. No, I don't know that anybody's ever asked me that question before. Well, I think, well, something I see that is a problem a lot that I guess I wish leaders knew so it wouldn't be a problem is that you can hold people accountable to behavior just like you can hold them accountable to performance and results. Yeah. And it's interesting to me that there's this weird divide of like, you've been late to work a bunch of times or missed a bunch of deadlines or you're not hitting your KPIs. And so we're going to discipline you up through termination. But then you get someone who's yelling and making the team uncomfortable and creating dysfunction and, doing the opposite of everything you're trying to help teams do. And there's this weird, like, that's behavior. That's different. And it's like, well, missing KPIs or not getting results is also a behavior problem. It's just that you can tie it to a KPI, a number, a percentage. And so I wish that dynamic, and it is shifting with things like core values and helping organizations, live those core values so they're not just words on the website. But
yeah, people ask me all the time, well, you can't measure stuff like that. And I'm like, heck yeah, you can. And they're like, well, what do you mean? How? And I'm like, okay, well, how did you define the problem in the first place? How did you know there was a problem? Oh, yeah. Well, like 3 times a week, someone's crying in my office. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not saying that's going to be our indicator, but like, maybe the goal is not to have anybody crying in your office.
Yeah, it's a good place to start. Yeah, it's a good place to start. And then through things like performance management, you can say, I think, I've been in HR for 20 years. Like communication skills has always been on the performance, whatever, performance management or performance evaluations. But then it's like, yeah, you communicate. I understand what you say. So check, you're good. What about the tone and all of that? So yeah. Laura's got posted something here. Let me stick it over here. Thank you, Laura. We love the interaction. The mistake lies in equating leadership with personal attributes, powers, and tools of influence rather than focusing on the work to be done. That's a good comment. What do you think, Mel? Because I know there's this sort of never-ending question of, are leaders born? Can they learn? Is it you need that charisma to be a leader? Can you sort of comment on what Laura's saying here? And thank you, Laura.
Yeah, I love it. And I guess you can interpret that comment in a lot of different ways, but equating leadership with personal attributes, powers, and she says effective leadership involves understanding the context, identifying the challenges or goals, mobilizing the necessary resources and people to accomplish the work rather than getting overly focused on the individual traits or tools of leadership. I like, thanks for the additional context. That's really helpful. I totally agree in that we are all individuals and how we employ our tools of leadership is going to be different and it's going to be nuanced. And you know what? That's beautiful. Mm-hmm. everybody is individual and growing at their own pace. It's also, therefore, hard to focus and oftentimes give feedback to leaders on how well they're doing, because we all have our own style and there's oftentimes like not one right way. But I think what Laura's getting at is we're measuring it using the same indicators. And so like we're measuring it on the work to be done and the outcomes that we're trying to achieve together, and not based on the individual attributes of the person necessarily. Does that?
Yes, I think. Yes, I agree. Well, and I think too, those personality characteristics, or the attributes, whatever we want to call them, are relevant in terms of culture. And so I do think we have to look at that. So if the culture is one of high competition, high stress, everybody just kind of live like a Wall Street office, thinking of that, versus like the leader of, a small town car sales place, like the type of leader required in those scenarios is going to be different. Or like the Wall Street person moves to the small town and becomes the leader of the car lot, that their personality traits that they've developed over time may not fit. So I think we're kind of back to, like, you do have to measure results and the goals, and making sure the leader's giving the right tools and resources. But I think personality or culture fit plays a role.
Totally. Here's like my take on that though. So using your example,
random example,
Wall Street, and making the assumption that we're bringing in a cliche vision of what a guy on Wall
Street. Total stereotype right here.
Let's just assume he's got a very distinct personality, and the people underneath him in his or her team have a totally different personality. Just like, that's actually very common. I see that very common.
Right.
And what breaks my heart a lot of times is that person on top who has ascended into that role because they're either technically capable, or maybe they've been a great leader over another team, and then they oversee this other team. They're seen as a demon or a wolf, or it's hard to see the beauty in him because of his personality. And the team calcifies and reinforces their perception of him because of his personality, and almost won't let him lead them, won't let him influence them, won't let him do his job.
Right.
And a lot of it is because of just assumptions made about his personality. And I think that could happen to the leader. That could happen to any single person on the team, anybody. And so a lot of the times getting from like an okay team to a great team is simply breaking down the assumptions and saying, like, what if he's a human? Like, what if he's actually an okay dude? Like, what if he has a heart and a family, and okay, maybe he doesn't make all the right decisions. You know what? None of us are perfect.
Yeah.
But what if I just give him a little bit of compassion and try to like be a champion of him just for a minute? Like, that is a catalyst for turning a team around sometimes.
Right. And I can attest to the fact that those wolves, as you call them, definitely have a heart. And I've been coaching for about 12 years, and I did have to let a handful of my clients go because they were not interested in changing. But, 90% of them have been very caring, and they actually care very much about the team, which is why they're so focused on results, because they're, it's like, well, we got to get results. It's how we're going to get acknowledged. It's how we're going to be successful. That's how we're going to, achieve what we're trying to achieve. So it's this kind of odd irony that they are villainized, and the team stops letting them, and they start going around the leader and trying to avoid the leader and not letting that person lead, when they're actually coming from a big hearted place. So
they're trying to, at least.
Yeah.
And this is actually one of my other curiosities I had for you. Because I think about this a lot. If when I think about like team leaders, when I talk to them, they ask me this question a lot, like what is it that makes team building really effective, and what is it that doesn't make, like, what, on the other hand, what could we do to basically sabotage team building?
Mm-hmm.
And I would be really interested to hear what you have to say when you work with your clients. What actually is a catalyst for success, and what is what stifles success? But in my case, it's what we're talking about right now. It is, does the team have the propensity or the desire to compassionately open themselves up
Mm-hmm.
to connecting to even people they dislike on their team?
Right.
If there is a willingness, and they've done a lot of studies on this stretching across the pond in like relationship, like Gottman, and
Yeah.
if there is a willingness to
Empathize.
and have adoration for and be compassionate for the other people on your team,
Yep.
then that, by far, from my reflection, is the thing that, if in place, I have high confidence that the team will move the needle. Even if it's like, we must use new systems to collaborate. Even if
Yeah.
it's something like, so just
Yeah. I would say the
basic.
same. I hear
Really?
you saying psychological safety, and that's everything that we're focused on here at Civility Partners, because my personal definition of things like inclusivity or civility or a positive and respectful work environment, for me, the ultimate goal is that I feel comfortable to say, hey, Mel, yesterday you said something and it kind of bugged me or hurt my feelings, or maybe I took it wrong. Could we talk about it? And that's where that everything you're talking about, adoration for, everything you do. I adore you and admire you for the way you ask questions. I always tell you, you think like a coach. You just can't help yourself. You're just full of questions. And so I have to admire that. And if we work together and it starts to bug me, or you ask questions that I feel are inappropriate or whatever, I still have to be able to talk to you about it. Right. It's never happened. In fact, I remember being with you on a girls' retreat with our friends, and I was like, I get to coach you, because you were asking me questions about something. Like, for once,
Yeah.
I'm coaching you. Anyway, so that I really do think psychological safety is the key. And then Jill, hi, Jill. Long time no see. Jill Masinko has joined us. Emotional intelligence is an incredible tool, she says. And I think that agreed. And it starts with this foundation of psychological safety.
Yeah.
So
well,
Dahlia,
Jill's an amazing practitioner herself, so she knows.
Jill, let's all have lunch.
And Dahlia, the lovely Dahlia, how to monitor and measure the effectiveness of team building activity to make sure it's paid off. I mean, this is a great question. I would be interested to hear what you have to say, Kat, but my opinion is, if you, with whatever you're doing in team building, if it's a team building event, or if you're just like, hey, we want to move from forming to storming to performing, and we want the team, we want to take them on a journey, whatever it is, in order to measure whether you are being effective at team building, you have to know what you're trying to do with team building. So if you want people to be more comfortable with each other, if you want people to collaborate more effectively, if you want to improve trust, insert whatever it is you're trying to do, you have to know what trust is going to look like. You have to know what good collaboration is going to look like. You have to know what feeling good together is going to look like in tangible terms. And then, like, I had a client that we did a team building it was a 2-hour team building session on collaboration styles. That was it, just 2 hours. And walking into it, I had them watch a video, and then walking out of it, they left with some things they needed to work on. And then the leader was like, how do I measure it? I'm like, well, you don't have time. We don't want to survey them. There's not a lot. Walk around your office and ask, how do you feel your level of confidence in collaborating with others is now? Is it like rate it 1 to 10? And he was like, everybody was like 9 or above. And I'm like, okay, so that's not a scientific measure, but you are pulsing your team and figuring out if they feel like they are able to collaborate. I would say it's a pretty effective measurement.
Yeah.
But you see what I mean? It's like, we don't have to get scientific and fancy about it, but you do need to know what you're trying to do so that you know what to measure. I hope that answers Dahlia's
Yes,
question.
I love that. And
What would you
I
say?
agree. I think, there's two types of research, right? There's quantitative and qualitative. So we could do a survey, and everybody in business loves that quantitative information, but qualitative, which is the language stuff, the anecdotes, the walking around, the observations, you could know if you were measuring increased confidence, that was your goal. You can sense it, you can see it, you can say, oh, I noticed this happened in a meeting that had never happened before. So let's not discount, there's a whole half of research that's focused on the anecdotal type of information or the observation. So I would agree. Sometimes we do, when we kind of do our manager cohorts, we'll do a little 360, just mini little, 10 question survey before we start. And that also helps us figure out, well, out of the 20 leaders in this cohort, where the things that, or what do they have in common that we could really be focusing on? And what are the things that we need to help? And then we can remeasure at the end with our little tiny 10 question survey. And then we can see, did the team feel like they're a stronger leader or not? Because that's ultimately who gets to decide if you're a good leader, the people who follow you. Right?
Yeah.
And
hopefully you.
What's that?
And hopefully you.
Well, yes, of course. I'm curious, just as we're kind of coming up to time here, I love a good horror story. What's the worst team you've ever worked with? Do you have like a ugly scenario that has, I get that asked all the time. Who's the worst person you've ever coached? Or just curious if you have that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have just one, but I do have a scenario that kind of pops up every once in a while. I bet you do. I mean, I haven't asked you this question, but I would bet that money that you probably experienced the same thing.
Okay.
I get calls from HR, and they'll ask me to come work with the team. And through exploring a little bit, I come to find out that there is an issue with 2 people, and they are just infecting the entire team. And the leader has not been able to deal with this problem. And they want to, and usually there's a little bit of a conflict avoidance there. Like, I don't want to deal with the problem because I don't know how. It's really tough. I don't know how to have that conversation. I like them both. There are lots of reasons.
Yep.
But bring in a team builder to kind of do team building for the entire team. And I kind of mentioned this earlier.
Yeah.
That actually makes things worse a lot of times.
Indeed.
So the worst team I ever worked with, I didn't know that was happening. And I walked into the team session. It was a half day. And like literally talking about it, I have like a feeling in my chest right now. It was a really hard day because there was like half the room was like stoic, not answering any. The other half of the room was like laughing and kind of like blowing everything off. And I'm like, what the heck do I do with this room?
Yeah.
And I could sense it was like the tension was palpable. And so it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was a waste of a half day, but certainly I learned a lesson in that session to really get clear on what is going on within the team before I walk into a session like that.
Yeah.
What about you?
I don't as much anymore, but I used to get a similar type of call. Could you do a training on workplace bullying? Because we have a few of them, or a training on respectful work environments. We have some disrespectful people and we're hoping they'll pick it up, and I'm like, I used to say, when you first start your business, you say yes to everything, but now it's, and it doesn't happen as much anymore, but it's like, no, I'm not going to do that because it's a waste of everybody's time. People are going to be frustrated with you, HR person,
Because you're
because
not solving the problem.
yeah, and you force them to waste 2 hours or half day in a workshop that everybody's thinking, why am I here? John and Bob are the problem, so similar scenario. My favorite was I got a call once. Could you teach the team how to be more assertive because the leader is a bully? I said, why don't we coach the leader? And the CEO doesn't want to touch him. We're not doing that. I'm like, well, I can't help you. I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
All right. We have one last comment just to share, and then we'll close it down. I found that developing leader skills in emotional intelligence and communication are key in team building and psychological safety. Cool. We'd love to hear more about it.
What a great final comment to close us out. I'm sad that we have to close it out because we could talk for hours. We have.
Well, we could always do a part 2. I love part 2s.
I'm so lucky that we get to hang out in this professional space together and help each other just in different ways be better practitioners and coaches, and it's just fun. And I'm really thankful for you, Kat. And I think you're amazing. And I'm sure everybody who's watching this thinks you're amazing too. I don't have to tell them anything, but
well, thank you, Mel. I appreciate that as well. It's so nice to have a friend that you can talk about personal and go super deep, talk about work and go super deep. Like I do
nerd
learn
out together and go super deep. Yeah.
I love it. In fact, I'll just share this story real quick because I loved this and I think lots of us could learn from it. One time I called Mel semi-recently, kind of, I need to talk to you, blah, blah, blah. And I just like threw up all this stuff that was going on in my life, and it was a big issue I was facing. And she listens. And then Mel, you said, what do you need from me right now? Do you want me to just listen? Do you want advice? Do you want some coaching? And it's just, I think most people just dive into the advice or whatever, and that will stick with me forever. And I try to use that now. So thank you for that nugget. The life-changing nugget.
Oh, thanks, Kat.
You're welcome. All right. So if you want to get in touch with Mel, she's here on this LinkedIn page. She's at Honeycomb Team Solutions is the name of her business.
It's actually Honeycomb Teams. I took away the solutions because it was like so long. So it's just honeycombteams.com.
And this page is. Oh, go ahead.
And don't forget the SHRM ID.
Thank you. See,
I did it. I remember.
Hold on. Let me figure out how to share it. Share screen. This is why I have a hard time doing it because I get confused. Okay, here we go. If you're looking for some SHRM credits for your recertification journey, there is the activity ID for you. And thank you all for joining us. And Mel, you can reach out to Mel on LinkedIn, head to her website. This video will be here forever on LinkedIn in case you want to tune back. All right, everyone. See you next week. Thanks, Mel.
Thanks, Kat. See ya.